permanent inactivation of acetylcholinesterase. This particular enzyme lyses acetylcholine at various levels in the body, at various sites in the body, especially various muscarinic and nicotinic receptors and neuromuscular junction. These acetylcholine receptors have been distributed almost in all parts of the body: central nervous system, glands, and peripheral nervous system, cardiovascular system. So because of this, there will be excessive active action of all these receptors because of excess availability of acetylcholine. That results in excessive receptor stimulation and followed by the blockade. So whatever symptoms and signs we see are because of these receptor overactivation. Nicotinic receptors present in neuromuscular junction. So because of this, we can see fasciculations, tremors, cramps, paralysis, and weakness. Autonomic ganglia, adrenal medulla, we can see the nicotinic receptors in these two areas. Because of autonomic ganglia, there will be hypertension and tachycardia. And if there is involvement of adrenal medulla, we can see patient will be refractory, patient's shock, whatever bradycardia and hypertension will not respond to even huge doses of atropine. In such scenario, patient requires low dose of catecholamine infusion, that is epinephrine infusions. Because of muscarinic receptor stimulation, there will be central nervous system signs like anxiety, restlessness, ataxia, convulsions, dysarthria, tremors, coma, respiratory depression, circulatory collapse, and cardiovascular system, hypotension, bradycardia, pupils, blurred vision, meiosis. Because of exocrine glands, excessive stimulation of all the glands, rhinorrhea, bronchorrhea, salivation, diarrhea, crampy abdominal pain will be there, and excessive lacrimation, excessive sweating. And excessive contraction of smooth muscles results in bronchospasm, crampy abdominal pain, and urinary incontinence. Not only on the receptor based symptoms, we can classify the symptoms and signs as per time of onset as acute, delayed, and late. Acute symptoms we can see within minutes to 24 hours. Those are the universal pneumonic sludge and tumbles, salivation, excessive salivation, lacrimation, urinary incontinence, diarrhea, gastric emesis will be there, and lacrimation and excessive sweating will be there. Delayed 24 hours to 2 weeks, we can expect patient to have intermediate syndrome or meiosis, salivation, bradycardia. Still we can persist up to 2 weeks. Late beyond 2 weeks, it can result in demyelination of peripheral nerves and muscle weakness, flaccid muscle weakness will be there. Types of paralysis: type 1 acute paralysis, type 2 intermediate, type 3 delayed paralysis. Other neurological signs, it can involve cranial nerves, diaphragmatic palsy, laryngeal nerve palsy, supranuclear gauge palsy. It can cause drowsiness to deep coma. Cerebellar signs like ataxia, these signs can be early or delayed. Neuropsychiatric symptoms, especially in case of farmers or persons who works in the manufacturing area because of chronic exposure, there will be delayed neuropsychiatric disorder will be there, like memory loss, confusion, irritability, lethargy. Extrapyramidal signs like Parkinson's like features, mask-like faces, bradykinesia, cogwheel rigidity, chorioathetosis, resting tremors, dystonia. Ophthalmoplegia, supranuclear gauge palsy, opsoclonus, optic neuropathy, retinal degeneration, myopia, and cortical visual loss. Other features: fasciculations, convulsions, delirium, GPS, excessive sphincteric spasm, and ototoxicity. Cardiovascular system, prolonged QT interval, bradycardia, tachycardia, VF, VT, hypertension, patient can be in shock, and non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema. What are the various routes of exposure? Inhalational, transdermal, ingestion, and subcutaneous. Among all, inhalational route results in fastest onset of symptoms and signs, and this route can be lethal. Transdermal, we can see especially in the farmers or medical professionals who has involved in the treatment of OP poisoning patients. Ingestion is one of the common route of suicidal attempt. In first 24 hours, we can expect patient to have cholinergic symptoms and signs, and intermediate syndrome we can see up to 96 hours. Late onset intermediate syndrome we can see up to 1 week. This we can see patient to have drowsiness to coma up to 4 to 6 days. 4 to 6 days. And cerebellar ataxia at the end of first week or initial phase of second week on after 8th day. Delayed onset extrapyramidal symptoms like cogwheel rigidity, tremors, mask-like faces, dystonias, involuntary movements like chorea and athetosis we can see up from 5 to 15 days. How do you diagnose? Especially the diagnosis is purely clinical and history based. Clinical, all typical signs and symptoms will be there. Tight meiosis will be there, lacrimation, salivation, excessive sweating, diarrhea, crampy abdominal pain will be there, urinary incontinence will be there. Patient can be drowsy or sometimes delirious, agitated. History, definitely most of the times the attendants will know the history of intake, and most probably most of times we can get to know the type of the compound that he or she consumed. The prognosis of disease or prognosis of poisoning depends upon route of exposure. As I told in previous slide, if it is inhalational route, the prognosis will be bad. And the other factors which decides prognosis is rapidity of aging and lipid solubility, amount of the compound. If patient takes high amount, obviously prognosis will be bad. If the compound lipid solubility is high, there will be huge lipid reserves will be there. So this poison continuously released into the circulation slowly. That results in prolonged disease and increased mortality and morbidity. If aging is delayed, there is a role of PAM. We can reverse the effect of the poison on the enzyme. If aging is rapid, there is no role of oximes, and we cannot reverse the effect of enzyme on the acetylcholinesterase, or effect of poison on the acetylcholinesterase. What is aging? Normally, this acetylcholinesterase binds to acetylcholine. This enzyme consists of two sites. One is acetyl site, another is esteratic site. Acetylcholine binds to acetyl site initially and then binds to esteratic site so that it will get cleaved, it will get lysed. This poison, organophosphorus poisoning, causes phosphorylation of esteratic site and prevents the binding of the acetylcholine to esteratic site, so that the enzyme, the acetylcholine will be active. It will not get cleaved. Over a period of time, eventually this enzyme will lose alkyl groups, results in aging. That means the effect of poison on the enzyme or inactivation of the enzyme is permanent. The half-life of aging, that means the time takes for 50% of compound or 50% of the enzyme to undergo aging is varies from compound to compound. Dimethyl, it will take around 3 hours, diethyl up to 33 hours. So in case of diethyl compound exposure, there is huge role of prolidoxime. Atypical organophosphorus like propafenose, which doesn't belong to neither dimethyl nor diethyl groups. The half-life of aging much less than 1 hour in case of this compound. So there is no role of oximes. Management, the healthcare professional who is involved in the management of the patient in the ER, he should or she should take all personal protective precautions, cap, mask, glove, gown, even goggles, because it can enter into the system even through inhalational route and through transdermal route. So take all personal protective precautions and initially stabilize the patient, airway, breathing and circulation. Ensure that patient is protecting airway and followed by decontamination. Remove all the clothings of the patient, wash the body with soap and water, and gastric lavage can be done if patient presents to you within 1 hour of consumption. And antimuscarinic drugs like atropine is the drug of choice to counteract the cholinergic symptoms and signs. Oxymes, as per type of the compound, as per the symptoms and signs. Patient requires close monitoring of all the vitals, oxygenation, heart rate and blood pressure and muscle weakness. So among antimuscarinic drugs, the available drugs are atropine, glycopyrrolate and hyoscine. Among three, atropine is the drug of choice because it can cross blood-brain barrier, so we can reverse CNS symptoms and signs of the poison. If there are extrapyramidal signs which are delayed in onset, we can try hyoscine to reverse the effects of extrapyramidal symptoms and signs. What is atropinization? The targets are heart rate of more than 80, systolic blood pressure of more than 80 millimeters of mercury, or mean arterial blood pressure of more than 65. No respiratory secretions. The atropine dose we can give intermittent or continuous infusion. Initially start with 1 to 2 mg boluses and every 3 to 5 minutes double the dose till we reach the atropinization targets. Once we reach the target, start with 10% of atropinization dose per hour infusion. Usually 1.5 to 2 mg per hour. We need to continue the infusion till symptoms get resolved and wean the infusion slowly. And watch for atropine toxicity while patient is on atropine, especially atropine psychosis, ileus and urinary retention. The role of oxime, as per WHO, all symptomatic patients should receive oximes. But if you look at the literature, it is a bit controversial because of wide variability in terms of compounds and timing of presentations. The dosage is, first we have to give bolus followed by infusion. We can give intermittent doses also instead of infusion. Some patients require up to 1 week as per their nicotinic signs and symptoms. The dose of praloxazine 30 mg per kg bolus followed by 4 to 8 mg per kg per hour. Obidoxime 250 mg followed by 30 mg per hour. What is the role of estimation of cholinesterase levels? Pseudocholinesterase levels, that is butyryl cholinesterase. These compounds inhibits not only acetylcholinesterase but also pseudocholinesterase that presents in the plasma. This pseudocholinesterase released from the liver. So once the poison inhibits this enzyme, there will be, if there is no residual effect of the poison, the level of this enzyme has to increase by 8% in a day. The regeneration rate of this enzyme, pseudocholinesterase or butyryl cholinesterase, is 8% per day. If with your serial trends this enzyme is not increasing, means there is still some active poison is there which still inhibiting the newly produced enzyme. So in that scenario, we can see patient is not recovering and there is a possible role of pralidoxime. Coming to RBC cholinesterase, the regeneration is less than 1% per day. So by estimation, by looking at single value of RBC cholinesterase or serial values of RBC cholinesterase, we cannot say patient is recovering or not, but we can estimate the severity. The RBC cholinesterase correlates with synaptic cholinesterase levels, neuromuscular junction cholinesterase levels. So if RBC cholinesterase is very low, there is high chance of patient having muscle weakness, other neurological complications. If you have availability of RBC cholinesterase assay, you can do this assay also along with pseudocholinesterase assay. Few special points: glycopyrrolate will not cross the blood-brain barrier. So by third or fourth day, if patient persistent requiring atropine, if you are concerned about atropine psychosis, prefer glycopyrrolate. And warn the family regarding anticipated neurological complications which can happen up to 2 weeks or up to 6 months also. Benzodiazepines are drug of choice for psychosis or secondary to atropine or delirium secondary to the poison. Thank you.